You know, we're talking about 1.5 million in the last 2 years alone. It is unsustainable.
Sorry, how do you get that
so
from
there
the
has
general
to be
election result?
control.
Did you realise that you lost by a
control.
huge majority? How did you get that from the result?
Gina.
No, how did you get that from the result?
Very easy. Did you notice how low the Labour share of the vote was? 33%.
Yes, but you said it was about immigration.
Of our electoral system. It's one of the issues. It's a major issue on the doorstep.
No,
you weren't a candidate.
What planet is this woman on? She hates Britain and believes the entire world has a right to move here. And because she believes that, she can't get her head around the fact the British public disagrees with her. She said we had legal routes for Ukraine, Hong Kong and Afghanistan, but what about the rest of the world? We've already taken in over 350,000 refugees in the last 3 years from those 3 countries alone. We can't be expected to take in any more. It's utter madness calling for more safe routes from other places at this moment in time. This debate was in response to the question of whether it is time to open more safe and legal routes after the recent horrific drownings in the English Channel. Everyone on the panel predictably said yes, but we know almost everyone who comes to this country gets to stay. Opening more safe and legal routes will lead to more people piling into the country. The Liberal Democrat leader just wants open borders.
Is it time to open safe and legal routes to the UK for refugees?
The short answer is yes, but obviously the deaths in Channel today are an utter tragedy. Every single one of those lives mattered. Those people had dignity, and they made the decision to cross for a variety of reasons we will never know. Gina said, certainly looking back over the last few years, the majority of those cases that are considered and actually processed, and the last government just didn't do that. That's the problem. That's why there are people in hotels and hostels, because the previous government just was incompetent at dealing with the backlog. But the majority of those people who've been through the system, once they are assessed, turn out to be genuine refugees. So if Andrew is right, and the majority of people are in favour of that kind of thing, then he is wrong to take the position that he does.
Just listening to him, we all know if he was running the country, it would mean millions more people being granted asylum. Genuine or not, we can't take them all. The current acceptance rate is already far too high. Of course, it is a tragedy what happened in the Channel, but those adults have to take some responsibility. France is not a war-torn country. What on earth were they doing getting on those boats with kids or when they were pregnant? And is it any wonder when you listen to this lot? These people will risk life and limb to get here because they know they'll get to stay and go straight to the front of the queue for housing and benefits. All I hear at the moment is we have a rich history of taking people in. Yes, we do, and we should be mostly proud of that. But times change, and there weren't 68 million people here back then. The country is a different place now, and we can't keep taking people in such high numbers. This debate is painful to listen to. It's clear only reform will do anything about illegal immigration.
Says, given what has happened in the Channel today, is it time to open safe and legal routes to the UK for refugees? Andrew Rossindale, Conservative MP for Romford, let's start with you.
Well, we've always been a welcoming country to genuine refugees and asylum seekers. We have a proud history of that. So there is a mechanism already for those who genuinely seeking asylum and refuge to come here. That's shown with the number of people from Ukraine that we have welcomed to our country. What we cannot allow is a continuous flow of illegal immigrants who are being brought over by these gangmasters coming into this country illegally and losing them into our country when they have no right to be here. So what we need is a serious policy to ensure that there is a deterrent for these people coming in the first place. Now, we had that, but it wasn't implemented because of the ECHR.
I think that what Olivia is asking is whether essentially the safe and legal routes that currently exist are sufficient to deal with this crisis.
What I would be more concerned about is the quantity that we're taking in. So I think that Britain has a limit. We can't take everybody, and if you make it so easy for people to come here, we know that so many of these people, some are genuine, of course, but there are lots that aren't. They come here for economic reasons. And we simply cannot be the place where anyone in the world who wants to come and benefit economically to enter the United Kingdom. There is no political mandate for this. In fact, the election just gone has demonstrated how angry the country is, not only at the amount of illegal immigration that we're taking into our country, but also legal immigration. You know, we're talking about 1.5 million in the last 2 years alone. It is unsustainable.
Sorry, how do you get that
so
from
there
the
has
general
to be
election result?
control.
Did you realise that you lost by a
control.
huge majority? How did you get that from the
Gina,
result?
Gina.
No, how did you get that from the result?
Very easy. Did you notice how low the Labour share of the vote was? 33%.
Yes, but you said it was about
because
immigration.
Of our electoral system. It's one of the issues. It's a major issue on the doorstep.
No,
you weren't a candidate. I
was a candidate.
Oh, really?
I didn't
well,
win.
I won, and you didn't.
No, I didn't.
And
that doesn't mean I didn't know what was on the doorstep.
People out there are furious at the levels of immigration.
Also, your schemes, okay, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Hong Kong, those are not legal routes for everyone. That's actually about specific schemes for countries that we had in place. That is completely different from legal routes. And that is, I don't understand why, irrespective of which government's in power, we don't have proper funded legal routes, border forces and agreements with the EU. I don't understand why it's so difficult to put these things in place. From what I've looked at, they aren't that difficult. It's about political capital and game playing.
Andrew?
I don't agree with that. I think that politically it is unsustainable to continue with the levels of illegal and legal immigration that we have at the moment. You
Absolutely,
seem to be arguing,
I don't agree. I don't disagree with that.
We make it even easier.
No, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. But actually, when people go through the system, when they eventually get through the system, which is so underfunded and broken, 72% of those who apply actually are found to be granted status to remain in the UK. So it's about the process of getting. It is the entire system of processing people is completely broken.
That most people in this country, looking at a genuine person seeking refuge, we've always welcomed them into our country.
Yes, I know, and it's about 72%.
This system is being abused, and it cannot go on.
Let me bring Tim Farron in, who has walked into the studio in the middle of all
when I was listening outside.
Oh, so you've heard the question. Let me just repeat it just in case. Olivia in Durham is asking, given what has happened in the Channel today, this terrible tragedy involving 12 people, including some children, losing their lives, is it time to open safe and legal routes to the UK for refugees?
The short answer is yes, but obviously the deaths in Channel today are an utter tragedy. Every single one of those lives mattered. Those people had dignity, and they made their decision to cross for a variety of reasons we will never know. Gina said, certainly looking back over the last few years, the majority of those cases that are considered and actually processed, and the last government just didn't do that. That's the problem. That's why there are people in hotels and hostels, because the previous government just was incompetent at dealing with the backlog. But the majority of those people who've been through the system, once they are assessed, turn out to be genuine refugees. So if Andrew is right, and the majority of people are in favour of that kind of thing, then he is wrong to take the position that he does. Safe and legal routes are not the only answer, though. They're going to be a part of it. I mean, clearly, much closer relationships with our neighbours across the Channel is part of it, but also processing people quickly and efficiently, because, yes, there are a proportion of those who come over who are they're asylum seekers, they turn out not to be genuine refugees, and if that's the case, you assess them quickly and efficiently, and then you return them humanely. There are some signs, the current government is claiming that is what they're currently doing. I'd like to see evidence of that, but that would actually be a genuine deterrent, unlike all the Rwanda nonsense.
Let me hear from Dan Hodges. Dan, what is your view in answer to Olivia's question?
Well, to answer the question, yes. I mean, we should have safe and legal routes. I mean, I presume Andrew is not arguing we shouldn't, because it's never been the policy of your party or your government that we shouldn't have a safe and legal route for people to enter the country. I presume you'd accept that.
Of course there should be a safe and legal route. What I don't want to do is to introduce a system which actually encourages people to come here, because we cannot take any more than we're already taking.
No, but you accept.
And there's no mandate.
But to answer the question, you accept we should have safe and legal routes.
I accept there should be a system for someone who is genuinely seeking asylum and refuge to be able to apply to come to the United Kingdom.
And that should be a safe and legal route.
Depends what you mean by that phrase, doesn't it, really?
Well, do you believe we should have a safe and legal route?
I've just said to you, I believe that anyone who's genuinely seeking asylum should have the ability to apply to come to seek refuge in any decent Western democracy, and certainly we have a proud record of that.
But they don't.
Right.
But they don't have any roots.
So unless you're a Syrian or Ukrainian or...
No, but absolutely. But just to pin this down, I mean, you presumably believe that means of applying should be safe, not dangerous.
We're going around in circles here. I've already said...
Well, we're not going. Well, the reason we're going around in circles is because you're not answering the question. Do you believe there should be a safe and legal route for people to come into the country? For some reason,
there should be a way of applying. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any
I'm sorry. I don't disagree with your broader premise. What I'm concerned about is why are you not prepared to say there should be a safe and legal route? You just accepted. We have a proud history. You also accept we have to have a way of meeting our obligations in relation to
So what is your
refugees.
definition of a safe and legal route compared to the current way we deal with asylum?
Well, the problem was at the end, as I think we all know, the government shut down almost, if not all, safe and legal routes. I think possibly with the exception of people with British military forces in Afghanistan. Obviously, it has to be broader than that, doesn't it? We have to have a safe and legal route for a certain number of refugees to obtain sanctuary in this country if we want to deal with this problem. Presumably, you're sure. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you're saying. On the one hand, you're saying we have a proud record. On the other hand, you're saying you seem to be acknowledging we do have an obligation to meet certain obligations to provide some sanctuary for refugees. But then you're... I genuinely don't get what you're saying. You seem to be unable to say we should have a safe and legal route for a certain number of refugees to enter this country. And what I don't understand is that has never been the position of your party. I don't think it's the position of your party now. You might want to have a word with your shadow foreign secretary after this interview. And so, because I'm not entirely sure Andrew Mitchell doesn't agree with the concept of safe and legal routes.
And Dan, can I follow up and ask Andrew? Tom Tugendhat has come out and said there should be a cap of 100,000. I'm not entirely clear where this figure of 100,000 comes from.
Is this asylum or immigration? Surely not asylum.
No.
Immigration. Yes, yeah.
It's a lovely round number. He says 100,000. You say what?
So I think there should be a cap. What that cap is, that would have to be voted through by Parliament. So Parliament would have to decide, and we've got to be accountable. Now, I know, through knocking on the doors, and I'm sure that Tim had the same experience, people in our country believe that immigration's gone too far. Now, immigration, including everybody that's coming into our country, whether students, asylum seekers, far too many people. It's unsustainable. So there has to be a way of controlling this. And if we don't, they're going to vote for a party that eventually will. So we have to have a very tough approach to dealing with this in the future.
I completely... I don't necessarily disagree with anything what you're saying. I just want to pin this down because I think it's quite important. Yes, there has to be a cap. You're presumably talking about net migration.
Yes.
Right, so you want 100,000 people who come here. So forget the figure. You want a cap on the number of people who come here to work in important industries, to work in certain services, etc., right? Fine. But then are you then saying Britain should uniquely, amongst countries in the civilised world, should then, on top of that, allow no asylum seekers?
I haven't said that at all.
Right, so, right, fine.
We are sort of
fine. So I'm just... Right, so you do accept we should have asylum seekers. I'm just trying to work out how you think they should get here.
I've made it clear that, of course, Britain has an obligation, as we've always
proved. So how do they get here, Andrew, under your system?
Let me give
apply in the usual way.
There isn't a usual way.
Let me give Tim Farron the last word on this, and then we're going to go to another question.
This is a huge challenge, and it's a tragedy as well, as we've seen today, a consistent series of tragedies. The people who make these incredibly dangerous journeys, starting from very dangerous places, very often the least dangerous thing they've done is cross the channel, by the way. If you've gone through Libya, if you've escaped from Isaias Afwerki in Eritrea and you're about to be conscripted to murder your own family, reasonable chance crossing the channel is a piece of cake compared to the things that you had to do. But what we need to remember is that we're talking about safe and legal routes, and maybe not entirely exhaustive list, but nearly a handful of people who helped us militarily in Afghanistan, some people from Syria, Ukrainians. I'm nearly at the end of the list of people where there is any kind of safe and legal route. So when people come to the UK to claim asylum and they're not in those groups, they have one option and one option only, is get on a boat or climb onto the underside of a lorry. And that is not right. Now, there are multiple ways we can act to stop this, being much tougher in terms of assessing people quickly and returning those people who are not genuine refugees. But you'll only know that if you actually assess them, rather than just returning them to Rwanda or some other such nonsense. Or you provide some safe and legal routes that means people do not have to take dangerous, life-threatening journeys. And this government in place now and the one it replaced have so far got no plan to do that.